Welcome to the Monday Drive Home Show with me, Rebekah Ricketts, live from Dubai. This is a brand new show, and today I hope you're not driving home from work and you're enjoying your summer holidays, as this is the topic of today's show, looking at how we can be kind to ourselves during our much-needed breaks. Please join in the discussion.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
So good afternoon and welcome. I'm Rebekah and this is the Monday Drive Home Show. This is my very first show, so please do join in the discussion by messaging or calling in. Today we are going to be talking about a really interesting topic, thinking about... there we go, stop that one. So today we're going to be talking about how we can be kind to ourselves during the summer break. I think teachers get a lot of stigma. You hear about, oh, you only work for your holidays. But when the holidays actually do come around and we have actually started to try and switch off, it's not always that easy. So please, today, I would like everybody to join in, share their ideas and join in with the discussion. So here I am coming to you live from a very hot, very humid Dubai. I'm just now into the middle of my holidays. I am 3 weeks into my fourth week. I've got about 2.5 weeks to go. And it has taken me a really, really long time to switch off this particular summer. So I thought that it would be a really interesting topic for my first show today. You've met me today at a very interesting time in my career. I spoke with Freya Odell last week. You can catch that podcast if you go on the Teachers Talk Radio, and you can hear that played back. And we were discussing working internationally, leading English, teaching abroad in general. And in that podcast, I discussed with Freya about the fact that I am currently in between schools. I was working in Dubai for 3 years in one school, and I am now about to start another one. And it's that really interesting time, that really interesting change in transition, where I'm actually now starting to think to myself, I've got a lot of work to do to prepare for my new role. I've got a lot of things to think about in terms of new syllabus, curriculum building. But at the same time, I just want to switch off. And it's that whole idea of how can you make sure that you are being kind to yourself and making sure that you use that time as productively and as kindly to yourself as possible. Later on in the show, I'm going to be joined by a friend and colleague of mine, Marie Dryden. She and I have discussed this at length quite a lot over the last few weeks, thinking about the things that we can do to enjoy ourselves and what we can be doing to relax and make sure that we are making the most of our summer break. So my question today is, why do teachers find it so hard to settle in during the holidays? Why do teachers find it so difficult to be kind to ourselves? Do we just have too much teacher guilt about switching off and downing tools? And if you do manage to switch off and down tools, can you please share some of those ideas? Because all of these ideas will be able to be used and used after through the podcast. So please don't be afraid to join in the discussion today. So as I was saying a little bit about me, I've been working in Dubai for 3 years, and usually during the summer holiday, I would use this time to go home to visit my friends, visit my family. With everything that's going on with travel restrictions, I am actually now stuck in Dubai for the summer. I know there are definitely worse places to be. However, it is that pressure thinking, what do we do? How can we make sure that we're utilising our time as productively as possible? Over on Twitter yesterday, I actually posted a poll asking international educators what they were doing for their summer. And the results weren't that surprising, to be honest. Of everybody that voted, over half of the people who teach internationally have ended up staying where they are because of the fear of not being able to get home, get back, getting stuck, really worrying about the restrictions that are there upon them. 25% of the people did actually say that they had travelled home, and that was definitely something that I wanted to think about and try to do. However, it just was very, very impossible from the situation that I was in. And a few people also mentioned that they'd managed to travel elsewhere. However, the other thing that when international educators are thinking about this is that in itself isn't always a break, because that is a pressure to go home, see lots of different people, travel around, and you're still not getting that break and that respite that you are actually looking for. So again, today, if any of you are international educators, if any of you are actually able to share in the discussion about those decisions that you made, why you travelled home, please join in, please call in, please message in the chat so that we can hear your stories as well. So as I mentioned today, later on in the show, I'm going to be joined by my friend and colleague Marie, and we're going to be discussing those strategies, thinking about what it is that we can do to be kind to ourselves. So for me, thinking about the idea of why it's so difficult to switch off, I think those final weeks of term, we're sat there, we're counting down, we're exhausted, we're focusing on exams, we're focusing on final grades, we're focusing on planning for the year ahead, and then all of a sudden, all of that just stops. We wake up on, well, in Dubai, we wake up on a Sunday morning, and yet we still seem to wake up even though that alarm has been switched off. Why is it that that happens? Why is it that we are not able to just completely switch off from the outset? I think for me, one of the biggest things is, as I'm on that countdown, thinking about what it is I'm going to do during my holidays, I always have that massive list of jobs, thinking about, I've got to go to the dentist, I've got to go to the doctor, I've got to go to the bank, I've got to sort this out. When you work in the teaching profession, you don't have the time in the same way as other people do to spend that time to take a day off work or to leave a little bit early, because we're always structured to that timetable. So I'm wondering today, again, how can we make sure that we're not just using that time productively and also being kind and fair to ourselves? Again, anybody who would like to join in the discussion, please do so, and you can share your ideas with me in the chat. I'm just going to play the first advert and then we will carry on from there.
Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts, or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsier puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.creativeresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TT Radio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful, and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TT Radio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence, how to deal with difficult colleagues, how to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment, and how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book yours at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events. Every teacher loves.
Okay, so welcome back to Monday's first ever drive home show with me, Rebekah Ricketts, live in Dubai. So I mentioned earlier on at the beginning of the show that I am well within my summer holidays, and it has taken me a ridiculous amount of time to relax, to switch off, and to really turn off more than anything that sense of teacher guilt. My guest who will be joining me later on in the show, Marie and I, have both said to ourselves we have to stop saying that we're being lazy. We're not being lazy by stopping. We are not being lazy by slowing down, enjoying a day of Netflix, because I don't think teachers ever realise just how much we are running around multitasking until we don't have to do it anymore. So far this summer for me, I had a huge productive list, massive, going to the gym, eating healthy, doing all these different activities, going to all these different places. And to be perfectly honest, I can say, hand on heart, I've probably touched on 2 of those things so far. So Mal, thank you so much for joining. Mal has said Rest is Doing by Matt Haig. And Matt Haig is somebody that I have definitely started to engage with a lot more on Twitter. And I'm seeing some of his books come up that I definitely want to read, because it is that whole idea about being kind to ourselves. And Krishna, first of all, thank you so much for your tech support. We talk about being kind to ourselves. It was a very stressful hour before my first show went live today, but Krishna was there to support me, as was Seb. Thank you for joining, Seb, to make sure that I was up and running on the tech side. We are enjoying a well-deserved holiday. And the reason why I wanted to touch upon this topic now, because I am halfway through, I know teachers in the UK, you're not quite that far yet, is the fact that we seem to still have that pressure to be going into school, or we're then making comments about people going into school. And it's about not just being kind to ourselves as individuals, but being kind to our teaching community, being kind to our colleagues. You know, we have to find methods and ways that make it the best for us. We've had a very, very stressful time. Honestly, I've been so nervous about doing the show today, talking just to myself, but I'm realizing it's just like teaching a Zoom lesson, which I've been doing since February 2020. The only difference is people are actually talking to me in the chat. So that's a welcome relief that I'm not just sat here talking to myself. But we have worked under the most stressful conditions, and it makes sense for the fact that, yes, we've got all these good intentions, we've got these great lists, we've got all of these great ideas, but if none of them, half of them, some of them, or all of them get done, that's still absolutely fine. I'm going to keep referring to what Mal has said about the idea of Rest is Doing, because when we get into September and we're into the run of it, we're going to miss this time, we're going to miss these holidays so much. But my question is why? Why do we find it so difficult to switch off? Please join in the discussion. Please share your ideas with me today. Why do we have that sense of teacher guilt? And how can we be kinder to ourselves? And if we are being kind, and if you're sat there listening today and you want to message in, what strategies do you use? How do you switch off? How do you make sure that you are resting, you are recuperating without that sense of guilt, that sense of uncertainty? As I mentioned earlier on, I'm about to start a new job, and with that comes a whole host of new pressures, a whole host of new policies, And it's wonderful, the level of communication I've received from the school that I'm going to. But at the same time, I feel a sense of pressure, a sense of urgency to be going through that work, to be reading through, to be checking all these different policies, which I know in reality, when I start, we will get that information anyway. But again, it's that sense of, why can't I just switch off? Why can't I trust the process? Krishna's just messaged in, possibly because we are asked, why do teachers need holidays? Well, that in itself is one of the questions that we know winds all teachers up, no matter what setting that they are actually working in. Why do teachers need holidays? Because we need to not have our emails pinging all the time. I read a really interesting piece on Teacher Tap yesterday. Are you enjoying not having your emails? Yes, very much so, to answer that question. But then it actually went into thinking about how we can phrase our emails better, how we can actually be kinder to ourselves when term time starts. And I think that's something else that we need to adopt in that approach. Yes, I've had days where I've sat on the sofa and I've binge watched all sorts of series on Netflix. And you know what? During term time, that's okay too. Somebody that's really sticking out to me at the moment during the Olympics, you'll have seen the photographs online, is Tom Daley. I think seeing him sitting in the stands, seeing him on Instagram with his new Instagram page with him knitting, I think that's a really wonderful visual to see somebody who is, working in an extremely high-pressured environment. He's got all eyes on him across the world, and he sat there knitting as a sense of finding his own form of well-being, his own form of rest and respite before he goes into one of the most high-pressured situations in his career. So comparing teachers to something like that, we have those high-pressured moments during the school year. We've had plenty of them during the climate that we've been working in this COVID situation. So how can we not only think today about how we can be kind to ourselves and the strategies that we use, but how can we then take those forward into the new school year? So when we are starting to feel exhausted, we are starting to feel that the tempers are fraying a little bit, the frustration, the shine of our new classes has worn off a little bit, what can we do to instill that kindness back into ourselves? So that is something that I would like everybody to be thinking about today when they're joining in with the discussion. So for me, one of the biggest outlets that I have had during term time is actually finding fitness. I have been one of those people who has always started a new fad, started something else. And here in Dubai, I finally found something that actually kept me engaged and kept me motivated, but during term time. And I'm finding what's very interesting now that I'm not timetabled, now that I'm not scheduled, I've got all the time in the world and now no time at all to fit in actually going to the gym. And I'm finding that very, very interesting in the fact that during the working week, that is my outlet for frustration. It's a really good time for me to actually switch off, think about things. Actually, as I'm doing the workout, I'm going through scenarios that I've had during the day or things that I know I've got coming up. But again, since the holidays have actually begun, that's something else that I've actually found that has stopped. So it's also thinking about the patterns that we have during term time and the good habits that we have and keeping them going through the holidays. Now, Krishna has messaged again. Thank you, Krishna. And she said there's a feeling of guilt because some teachers use the summer for all sorts of CPD and come back with lots to talk about. And I asked myself, what did I do? Peer pressure in a way. I couldn't agree more. I always have a stack of books, either on my Kindle, and that's trash that I wouldn't even want to talk about. As an English teacher, as a head of English, I feel like the expectation is that I'm always reading highbrow literature, and during the holidays, 100% absolutely not. I read some of the trashiest, most awful romantic literature, but it's just something that washes over me that I don't even have to think about. But next to my Kindle is always a stack of pedagogy, thinking about teaching and learning, focusing on things that really I feel that I should be considering and thinking about. And then I go on Twitter and I see that people have read all sorts of different books, so I add those to my reading list. And again, it's creating that pressure for myself to feel that I have to be performing in a certain kind of way, even though that this is my holiday. I was recommended a book actually that has been very, very helpful, not to do with teaching, but to do with mindset. And I can see that David's there, so thank you. And it was called Who Moved My Cheese? And it's all to do with the idea of change and accepting change and dealing with change. Because as I mentioned, in this state of transition, starting a new job, I've found that very, very difficult in terms of letting the old school go and thinking about starting anew. And I would thoroughly, thoroughly recommend. It's a very easy read. It's a very quick read, but it is something that has really helped me just adapt myself to my summer situation a little bit and just think about how I can use this time positively, use it productively, but again, going back to that idea about rest being productive, rest is doing, and rest is being helpful to myself. I'm just going to play the news now, and then when I'm going to be back, I'm going to invite Marie to come and join the discussion.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Blake. In Scotland, despite an expectation that the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon will confirm a move beyond level 0 from the 9th of August, 16 out of Scotland's 18 physical universities have said that students will continue to be taught partially online from September. In a change from last year, most of the universities will expect students to live on campus. A spokesman for University Scotland said, following the publication of the Scottish Government's guidance, we are anticipating a general resumption of the in-person experience that is so important to students' learning progression, such as seminars and tutorials, laboratory practicals and work experience. These will be complemented by the wider students' sporting and social experiences in line with the lifting of restrictions across society. Students may see some differences at the start of this academic year. For instance, we are not envisaging the immediate resumption of large lectures. And of course, students have always had different university experiences based on what and where they are studying. Student Union NUS Scotland said that students were hoping for a bit more normality in the new term. In England, a £4 million Department for Education scheme will introduce a 4-year pilot programme across 40 secondary schools to teach Latin in state schools. According to a British Council survey, Latin is taught at Key Stage 3 in less than 3% of state schools, compared with 49% in independent schools. The Education Secretary Gavin Williamson said, "We know Latin has a reputation as an elitist subject which is only reserved for the privileged. But the subject can also bring many benefits to young people, so I want to put an end to that divide." He added that there should be no difference in what pupils learn at state schools and independent schools, which is why we have a relentless focus on raising school standards and ensuring all pupils study a broad, ambitious curriculum. Jimmy Mulville, chairman of the charity Classics for All, said, "Any move by the government to re-establish the teaching of any of the classical subjects in state schools is most welcome. So this initiative focusing on Latin is a good start to that ultimate goal." This has been your daily education news briefing.
Okay, thank you and welcome back to the Monday Drive Home show with me, Rebecca, live in Dubai. So I'm just going to invite Marie into the discussion today so she can discuss with you some of her strategies and things that she's been doing in terms of trying to switch off and be kinder to herself in the holidays. Hi Marie, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me this evening. So yeah, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm also an English teacher. Throughout my career, I've been head of department, I've worked in pastoral. Previously to that, I also worked for social services. So kind of quite a broad range in terms of my career experience. However, this year, interestingly during COVID, I have been working as head of health and wellbeing. So this is a topic that's very much of interest to me this evening. And I've been looking at everything people have been saying and the points that you've been making, Rebekah. So I just, I'd like to start by saying that I totally empathise with you in terms of those expectations we put on ourselves, those long lists we have, the things that we must do, the books we must read, the places we must go. And it's almost, I feel, it's like fatigue. That first week, I would say at least a week and a half, I really, really struggled to get myself motivated, to get myself out. And then, of course, as you say, comes that guilt as well. I'm wasting my holiday. I've been waiting all of this time to do these things, and I'm just not making use of the time.
So thank you so much. Oh, I think I'm echoing. I think we're good now. Yeah, so thank you so much, Marie, for introducing yourself and actually talking a little bit about your holidays so far. So yeah, like Marie said, we've both been having those discussions. That idea, like she said, about fatigue and thinking about actually stopping for a little while. So that was the first part of your holidays. Have they picked up? Have they changed? How have they been since the first week and a half?
Absolutely. I think after the first week or so, I'm feeling a lot better in terms of my fitness regime. I've got into good habits. So I'm actually getting I was reluctant to put an alarm on in the morning, but actually that has helped significantly. I've been up and out and getting to my exercise class first thing in the morning, and then I'm feeling more invigorated. I'm feeling that I want to go out and do things. I feel that I'm starting to enjoy cooking again, which is something that's very therapeutic for me. So it's just remembering all of those things that actually bring you peace and bring you enjoyment, and things that you feel you may have felt you didn't have time for previously. And somebody said, I think it was Mal said, rest is doing nothing. So rest is actually doing. And I'm just in the middle of reading a book at the moment. It's called Nixon, and it's called Embracing the Dutch Art of Doing Nothing. And what Nixon actually means translated is actively doing nothing, planning in for doing nothing. Almost like a meditation throughout the day. So I've been working and living in Dubai since 2012. Interestingly, had a year in Amsterdam teaching in 2019. And there was just something about the Dutch culture. They're super productive. They get things done. They get things done in a timely fashion, but they will leave work and they have that switch off, and they really respect their personal time, their family time. And you will just see Dutch people sitting with their bikes in the park, just watching the world go by. And it really is, considering it is just across the water from the UK, I was really shocked at that Dutch culture. And the children in schools are the happiest, apparently are the happiest children in the world. And what does that tell you? So I think it is about factoring in that rest and that recovery, planning days of not doing anything and not feeling guilty about that. And actually what that does is it rejuvenates you and it enables you to then approach maybe the next day with a little bit more gusto, and wanting to get things done on the list. We are teachers. I think it is part of our DNA almost, that we love a list. We love getting things done. We love feeling productive and getting the most out of the day. But going back to my career in children's services, that was a highly stressful career, very emotionally draining. I only got 5 weeks holiday, so 5 weeks annual leave, but I was not as tired as I am as a teacher. And why that was, is I was in charge of my own schedule. If I had a stressful day, if I knew I was going to have a stressful client, I may then factor in then some office time. If I had a late meeting, as long as I did my 37.5 hours, I could come into the office at 10 o'clock. If I felt that I was feeling drained, I could then take just one annual leave day and add it onto a weekend and have a long weekend. So I never felt, I liken it, I'm a runner, and I liken it to the sense of finishing a marathon, just keeping going until you absolutely are running on empty. You have nothing left apart from your adrenaline, and then you stop, and then it's too late. The damage has been done, and it's not holiday, it's recovery. So the first few weeks is absolutely recovery, because with the best, we beat ourselves up at the best will in the world when you're feeling that way. Are you able to cook healthily, or are you ordering in? Have you skipped the gym sessions? Have you stopped reading because you're so tired? And you kind of start to feel the guilt as well. And it is just about stopping. And even in my holidays, I remember my mum said to me, "Why can't you just take a holiday like a normal person?" I always felt guilty. People would say teachers get all of this time off. So in that time, I trained as a running coach, so I could provide more ECAs at school, and a fitness instructor, so I could help out in the school gym. I've done crazy things. I've done teaching myself how to tie box in Phuket, because I just felt I should do things with my holidays, and it's taken me a long time to realize that you need to take that time. And it's great to do those things, but not for the right reasons. And as I say, going back to that word Nixon, actively embracing doing nothing, and that's okay.
Thank you so much, because you've really oh, sorry, Marie, I think
it should be okay now, sorry.
Okay, thank you. I think you've touched on so many interesting ideas there. The first thing, that idea about respecting personal time and actually stopping. I think during term time, that's one of the absolute biggest downfalls that we have in our profession. We have PPA time, we have free time, and it's always scheduled in that's when we're marking, or we're planning, or we're catching up, or we're trying to throw in a 15-minute meeting. We never actually have that time to actually stop when we are working, to respect that personal time. And that just doesn't go beyond the school day. I'm preaching to the choir here. We know that when the bell rings at 3 o'clock or 3:30, the job's far from over. So I do think that is something that we find very, very difficult. So yeah, the day or the term finishes at the start of July for us in Dubai. But it's that then actually having to think about respecting our personal time, because to be perfectly honest, throughout the year, we haven't. Children will be emailing us, or we'll be phoning parents home. That idea of actually having that opportunity to have that time for ourselves is very, very rare. And I think what you're saying there is we're actually out of the habit, perhaps, of respecting our own personal time.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. And I think COVID hasn't helped with this. Not only are we subject teachers, we're now tech support. It goes into our private time. So we may get messages more so from staff, from students. And as teachers, again, we feel obliged to respond to that. Notifications. I think technology's fantastic, but also we have notifications pinging through onto our phone, and people just being mindful when they're sending these messages, and what time they're sending them. I think we can all do that to help one another, actually.
I think you're right. And again, it's about working together as a team, isn't it? And actually trying to pull together. Now, I can say that because Marie and I have actually worked together for the last year. So when Marie came back to Dubai, it was like a breath of fresh air, to be perfectly honest, because she came in with new ideas and it kind of reinvigorated all of us in the department, even though we were working in a very strange circumstance, because the school that Marie came to, the school where I was working, we just found out was going on a temporary 2-year closure. So we were then not only working as teachers to support the students, but as an entire staff cohort, we were then also looking for new jobs. We were looking for new places of employment. That hasn't been for everybody within Dubai. So we've also said goodbye to colleagues that have gone far and wide across the world. Quite a few have gone back to the UK. Again, I mentioned earlier the podcast that I did with Freya the other day, and I discussed that in quite some length, that idea of the fact that people have had to be finding jobs and that recruitment process that everyone's had to go to. And not only that, we then have to support the well-being of our students and helping them make their right decisions in finding a new school. So again, when we're talking about all those things that Marie has covered in terms of our personal experience this year, it has been somewhat stressful. It's been somewhat out of the ordinary. And that was another reason why I wanted to bring her on today, because throughout this whole process, Marie has been an absolute ray of sunshine. And the thing that you said, Marie, about the happiest children in the world seem to be the ones who are taught in the Dutch system. I'm like, what can we bring into our classroom? Because we know a stressed teacher is not going to bring a pleasant teaching environment. So how can we maybe adopt some of these strategies, do you think, during the school year to make sure that we're also having some of the happiest children in our classroom?
I think we got ample opportunity during tutor time, but not only tutor time, but even as subject teachers, the way that even the texts that we choose that open up conversations about thoughts and feelings and ideas, and also just approaching school life holistically. If we think back to our education, we weren't taught those coping strategies, meditation, yoga, ensuring even that school menus are healthy. I mean, looking at school menus, it's so many things about health and well-being are tokenistic. It's bolt-on. It's box ticking because the government say so, or SLT say so. But it needs to be absolutely embedded in everything that we do. It's so important. With COVID as well, there's so many issues now with mental health, more so than ever. And it really is factoring in that time. And as you say, if we don't come in to the school environment refreshed, well, we're not going to be able to offer that emotional support and that support to one another and to our students. So it really does need to be funded. There needs to be a budget for wellbeing. It's not good enough just to throw a yoga session in after school for teachers. And as I say, these one-off tokenistic things, it really does need to be embedded within school policy. And I think that starts quite high up. So we need to take charge of that for ourselves in the way that we interact with students and think about what we can control, because some of these things that we can't control. And we were talking about this in the car, weren't we? That how many professions are handed a timetable and look at it and think, I'm going to hate Tuesdays for the rest of the year. Tuesdays are always going to be horrendous. It's mind-boggling, isn't it, to think that we have so little control sometimes over our day. And as class teachers with heavy timetables, trying to factor all of this time in. And I think it's about prioritizing. I was told off once for using the words or using the phrase cutting corners, because I don't think we do cut corners. As we develop in our profession, through our experiences, we really realize what counts, what matters, when you're thinking about outcomes-based ideas and actions. So it is about prioritizing what really matters. And I think when we start getting that right and actually making time for ourselves, making time for our well-being, and also making time for our students' well-being as well, whether that's within timetable, whether that's tutor time as well.
I think that's really interesting, because basically what we're actually getting to now is the idea that we can't really be kind to ourselves in the holidays if we've not been kind to ourselves during the year, because we're not in the practice, we're not in the habit, we're constantly looking to criticize, we're constantly looking to find ways to, we're always looking for feedback, we're always looking for ways to improve, because as practitioners in the classroom, we're trained to be reflective. You know, they say the best teachers are the ones that are reflective, but when does reflection then become self-criticism?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is thinking about how we develop a culture in a school, a climate in a school, eradicating that blame culture. If SLT were to walk into a classroom, they should be looking for the positive things as well. It shouldn't be all these things put in place shouldn't then be adding to teachers' anxiety, especially in these COVID times. And I know that it's really thrown me. It's taken me out of my comfort zone. Suddenly being teaching online simultaneously to teaching in the classroom, or we like to put sort of these labels on things and call it blended learning, or and kind of normalize it, but it's not normal. We're trying to split our time with students in the classroom, students online, and it can't be done effectively to the extent of having all those students in front of you. Yes, it's in our nature as teachers to be flexible, to try our absolute best for our students, but we're always going to be hard on ourselves, because it was never going to be an easy ride this year at all. With all of, and we've been teaching in masks all day. Just thinking of that, I suppose that additional anxiety I felt, even things at break times, being on break duty, making sure students are socially distanced, making sure students are wearing their masks properly. So all of these additional things that have been added to our teaching day. Of course, I think this summer is inevitably going to be exceptionally stressful. And as you commented earlier, Rebekah, about, I don't know about a lot of people that are teaching internationally, but should I go home? Shouldn't I go home? And that's the guilt as well. If I go home, I get stuck and I can't get back, I'll feel terrible. If I don't go home and I don't get to see my 90-year-old nan, I also feel terrible. So it's difficult as an expat teacher as well. So it's adding all of that into the mix. So it's about not becoming overwhelmed by all this. Lots of these things we can't change, and we need to accept that, and we need to start small and do things that we can do for ourselves. And as I said, I think that starts with taking that time out for yourselves, your families, eating well, exercising, having a cut-off, and being quite disciplined about having that cut-off. Your job is never done as a teacher. There's always things that you can do to improve. As you said, Rebekah, we're reflective. Well, that lesson could have gone better. I need to differentiate that resource. I need to do this, I need to do that. But sometimes we need to stop and prioritise. And I think we learn that through experience. But I've met teachers that have been teaching 20, 30 years, and they still worry about these things. And teachers apparently have got the highest level of imposter syndrome. We may be well qualified, we may have significant experience, but we always feel that we're not good enough somehow, that other people are doing better than us, they're teaching better than us, their subject knowledge is better than ours. And I think that comes from us as well. We need to be more supportive of one another. We need to just change sometimes, I think, the culture within schools generally.
I couldn't agree more with everything you've just said there. That idea of the imposter syndrome and building a culture, just to give everybody who's not in Dubai a little bit of context. So since February 2020, we went on to distance learning. Sorry, Marie, could you just mute me again? Thank you. We went on to distance learning in Dubai, and we haven't taught a full face-to-face lesson in the UAE, in Dubai in particular, since then. We went back to school in September, and we didn't know from one day to the next how many students we were going to have face-to-face, how many students were going to be online, and if they were online, whether or not they were actually going to communicate with us. So I made a comment at the start of the show, and I said how nervous I was about doing this first show, but it did really remind me of the multiple Zoom lessons that I had, where I was literally sat in an empty classroom talking to a laptop screen. And I have to be honest, the Twitter community more than ever really came through for me there, because I realised that it wasn't just me sat alone in 40-degree heat. It was actually happening all around the world. And there were a lot of disengaged students. And with that, again, came extra pressure as a head of department, how I was then trying to re-engage an entire cohort of students, how as a department, and physically in the school for the first time, we were very fractured. We were working in year group bubbles, in teams. So for the first time, I never got to see my department. And I have to be honest, I've never realised how much I took for granted. That moment when you stand out on the corridor, that 30 seconds of calm in between each class, when you wave across to your friend, you wave across to your colleague, you say, oh my gosh, so-and-so's just said the most hysterical thing, I'll tell you about it at break. All those moments, we have to remember we've not had those in the same way. So again, coming back to the idea of being able to switch off, everything has been magnified. The pressure has been intensified. As I mentioned, Marie and I have been working together this year, but I've probably seen more of Marie outside of school than I actually saw of her in school. And all of our communication was pretty much done over email and WhatsApp, because we weren't allowed to be in the same bubble as each other. So when we're talking about all of these things today, and when we're looking at this evening, I think it is really important, and Marie, you've really hit on something there, that idea of the fact that it's the culture that we come from and how we can support each other during the school year to make sure that when we do come to that time, how we can actually rest and recharge. And that's going to be my next question. So Marie, what kind of strategies do you use? You've touched on a few things, but what kind of things do you use to rest and recharge? Now, the reason, again, why I've asked Marie today is because she has been my support network during the school holidays, and she's given me a lot of great ideas that I thought would be brilliant to share in today's show. So, Marie, what do you think?
As I touched on before, it's actually factoring in active rest days. As I said, I think I touched on before as well, I'm a runner, and even when you're training for a marathon and you're putting a plan together, if you just train every single day, you're going to get injured. You're not actually going to make it even to the start line. So you're not actually going to make it to the start line, which will be August for us, September for those in the UK, and you're going to be tired before you even start the academic year. So for me, it's about not doing what you think you should be doing, but really what generates interest and relaxation and a passion for you. It could be maybe you're an artist, maybe it's something that you want to do, maybe you want to start yoga, meditation, and I think things are at our fingertips now online. It's not that we need to necessarily have additional funds for these things. Just getting outside, and that's something I really, really miss actually in Dubai now. It's so hot and humid here at the moment. Dubai is beautiful in many ways, but coming from the Netherlands, I really miss the greenery. I miss getting out, and I think don't underestimate the power of being in nature in some way, and really making the most of that. It really, really does boost those endorphins. So I think it's just factoring in things slowly, just slowly maybe changing diets, and trying to be a bit more healthy, trying to incorporate a little bit more exercise, starting to do things for yourselves. And as I say, it's not feeling guilty about not ticking all of those things off your to-do list. Sometimes you need to go back and alter that in some way, and also celebrating those small things that you have done day to day. I've had a declutter. I was very proud of myself. I even sent you some photographs tonight, Rebekah, of my dressing table and going through drawers and makeup and clothes, and all of those things that I've been putting off over the academic year. I've read a couple of books that had been sat there for a while. So it's just celebrating those things as well that you do for yourselves. And trying to carry that on as well into the academic year. I think it's got to be sustainable as well. Sometimes we go all in with something, and then that's when it falls apart. We need to do things that we can do day to day. So it could be that if you're decluttering, you get rid of a couple of things a day, and before you know it, it just happens gradually. And I think that's what we do wrong as teachers. Sometimes we just try to multitask all the time and not actually finish a task, and we're just playing this juggling game. So that would be my advice as well. And as I say, just celebrating those small wins.
I really like that idea about celebrating the small wins. And Marie is right. We are literally WhatsApping each other every day. And it's like yesterday we went to the gym together and it was like, right, okay, that's something achieved. Marie knows that I love a spreadsheet. So Marie's advice to me was to make a spreadsheet and get it color-coded so that every time I'd achieved something, I could tick it off that spreadsheet. So now it's a kind of case of, okay, Marie's done her dressing table. I'm going to go and do my wardrobe in my spare bedroom. And it's really nice, actually, to have that person. And this would be one of my pieces of advice, is to have that person to almost bounce off, not in a competitive way. It's been very supportive, hasn't it, Marie? But just kind of, when I realised that Marie has said, oh, I'm going to go and buy a jewellery box and sort out all my jewellery, and then you've actually gone and done it, it then makes me turn off Netflix and actually go into the spare bedroom and go and tackle the things that I know I need to tackle and have been saying I'm going to tackle for the last 3.5 weeks. And I think that process for me has definitely been more helpful. I think the idea of what you said about just doing it slowly and having those small wins makes such a difference. And then you do realise, sometimes in term time I come home and I think I can't do any more today. I'm done. Cooking dinner and sitting down, that's enough. Keeping up with my friends, speaking to them, whatever. And then I actually sit back and I think, okay, well, you've done a data analysis, you've had a department meeting, you've had a line management meeting, you've taught 3 lessons. And when you actually think about the things that we pack into a school day, I actually think it's no wonder that we really struggle in the holidays to be kind to ourselves and to switch off. And I'm really appreciating, Marie, those kind of strategies that you're talking about, because they are things that we really need to think about to sustain this beyond the holidays themselves. I'm just going to play a quick advert and then I'm going to come back to Marie, because we're going to then start talking about what we're going to do in the new year, in the new school year, so that we can continue being kind to ourselves.
Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. Teacherslovestationery.club.
Okay, and welcome back. We are with the Monday Drive Home Show with me, Rebekah Ricketts, for my first ever show live in Dubai. And I'm joined right now by my friend and colleague, Marie Dryden, as we're talking about things that we can do to be kind to ourselves as the new school year approaches, but more importantly, during our well-earned, well-deserved holidays. And I refuse to let anybody outside of the education system, or even inside the education system for that matter, suggest otherwise, and thinking about things that we can do to be kinder to ourselves, which will ultimately lead to us being kinder to our students. Now, Marie, you mentioned something earlier about this idea of funding and about making actual time, it not just being a tag on, to think about how we promote and support positive well-being for students. And as you were saying that, I just could feel my eyes rolling thinking about this whole rollout about teaching Latin in the UK, and just how, when we are talking not just school leadership, but from the very top, just how much people are actually missing the point, especially as you've mentioned as well, in these times, in these COVID times, where we have students who have missed an entire year of social interaction, of actually being in the classroom, of sitting in the canteen, of going out and playing football. None of our students have had any of that for such a long time. Why do you think people are getting it so wrong? Why do we think that people high up are getting this so wrong?
Quite simply, they're not in it. Now, I like the idea of creating an even playing field between state education and private education, but we need to understand that it's not that simple. It's a very simplified approach. The demographic is totally different, and the students' needs are totally different. My first teaching post was a school that had just come out of special measures in an area of deprivation. And would they benefit from learning Latin? Probably they'd benefit from having more careers advisors, more school counsellors, more support with core subjects, especially literacy. Would they benefit from Latin? Probably not. So I like the idea, but as I say, I think the problem is within government. The people in charge of education have actually not got any teaching qualifications themselves. They've just been to school, and usually a private school, and I've got very limited knowledge of actually what's going on. I've taught in many different types of schools. I've taught in state schools that were quite a different demographic from the first one. I obviously teaching internationally now, and there is different needs within schools, but ultimately I think all of our students, whatever background, whatever school, whatever country, have had an immensely challenging year. Well, we can't even begin to think about it really in terms of the things that they've missed. They've missed their proms. They've missed so many different social events. They've missed graduation. They've missed all of these key things in their lives that are significant. And as Rebekah is saying, that we've actually been in and out of school. We had a period where we had quite a few COVID cases, and we were asked to stay at home and teach online. And you get used to that routine. And even as a teacher, you start to feel anxiety of, how I'm going to cope going back into school. It's going to be different. And also for us wearing the masks as well, you can't see people's facial expressions. You can't see people smile. And that's huge. And I don't think we're really thinking about the long-term effects that COVID's actually going to have on the students, and what support needs to be there for them as we come through this. And I do think school is far more than academics. It's for a lot of students, it's a lot more than that. And obviously, coming from social care background, I saw that firsthand. for many students, you aren't just a teacher, you're a role model, you're their emotional support, and they've missed that. And that's quite worrying as well. And we need more funding in the UK, and more is being taken away. So we're talking about something much bigger than us, and I think sometimes then we start to become overwhelmed. But as I said earlier, I think it's about starting small, doing those things that can have an effect for yourselves, for your classes, for your tutor group, for your department. And you can make a difference. You can make a difference, even if you make a difference to one student, to one colleague, by being kind, by being supportive. It does a lot more than you actually believe.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. I'm going to go back to some of the things that you said first of all when we started talking about the idea of putting Latin on the curriculum. Now, I remember a few years ago when I read Reading Reconsidered, and there was something in there that really, for years, has struck a chord with me, and that idea of cultural capital, and saying that it was elitist to not provide students with more enriching, more engaging, more challenging texts just based on ability. And that has completely changed my approach to planning in terms of department leadership. So when Marie joined us, I'd been head of department for a year, and I'd moved into mixed ability setting, slightly more challenging text, bearing in mind that we're teaching English as a second language. But that idea of cultural capital and that idea of it being elitist, at the moment, I don't really think that that's the priority. You know, we're talking about how we can be kind to ourselves, but again, all roads lead back to the students, and thinking about what we can do to support and be kind to them. Is Latin going to help them, or is CV building going to help them? Is removing BTEX from the curriculum going to help them, or is it giving them yet another elitist subject? How is that going to be of any kind of benefit to them? And also, Marie, that thing you were saying just then about small things that we can do about being kind, you know, within the school year, whether it's to one person, whether it's to your department, whether it's to a class, whether it's to one child, all of those things have a massive impact. And we know, and again, teachers were so guilty of this. We don't focus on the 30 positives that we have during the day. And it's the one thing that I will never, ever take away from our job. You can guarantee that you are going to laugh at something during the school day. You know a student is going to say something to bring a smile to your face, but that's not what you take home with you. You always take home that one comment that a colleague has made, or a sassy remark a student has made, and that's what sticks with us. So I think you're right, Marie, when we're talking about this as a subject, it's so much bigger than just thinking about how we can be kind to ourselves in the holidays, and how we can actually take that forward and pay it forward to ourselves when the going gets tough. We are very, very fortunate here that 99% of the time the sun is shining. It's warm weather, maybe too warm right now, but it's lovely, beautiful environments to be working and teaching in. I don't miss those dark, wet mornings. I feel for my British colleagues when winter rolls around, because I hated that time of year, standing out on the playground, soaking wet, watching the kids play football, huddling around in corners, just thinking, please go stand inside so I don't have to be here. You know, all of these things, we have to think, how do we pay this forward? So, Marie, I'm going to come back to you now and ask you, what kind of strategies are you going to take with you as you move into the new school year? How are you going to try and maintain a positive work-life blend? How are you going to try and manage keeping positive? What are you going to do?
Oh, goodness. I think if I had the precise answer to that, I think I'd make a lot of money. Who has the perfect work-life balance? And I think how I would explain it is everything. There's no destination. Everything's a journey, isn't it? Not wanting to sound cliched, but it's something we have to work on continuously. We don't just suddenly get it right. We get it right, and then we slip off, and then it's about being mindful, with all of our actions and everything that we're doing, and just acknowledging how you're feeling before it's too late. So I'm feeling really drained. So I'm going to take a weekend for myself this weekend. I'm going to put that on the back burner. So it's just staying one step ahead before you kind of go down that rabbit hole, really. So my strategies is just being in tune with yourself and how you're feeling emotionally and physically, and just making changes accordingly, and just being really aware of that.
Do you think you would go for another health and wellbeing role in your new school? Is that something that you would like to continue with?
Absolutely, it's something I'm very passionate about. I'm passionate about my subject, obviously, but I've always perceived myself as a holistic practitioner, probably because of the social care background as well. It's something, as I say, it needs to move forward than something that's tokenistic. You can't just employ somebody and say, right, you're in charge of everybody's health and well-being. That's quite a tall order. It needs to be something that we empower others and give them the tools. Teachers are obviously a highly intelligent profession, but then when it comes to making the right decisions about their own health and well-being, many of us tend to make the wrong decisions, or decisions that aren't right for us. So I think it's actually not just well-being for students, and this is, I think, where we might be going wrong with it, because as you alluded to earlier, that happy, healthy teachers creates a positive school environment, and then that obviously has a knock-on effect to the students' well-being as well. So I think bringing people in terms of CPD, yes, it's amazing to have CPD for teaching and learning, but how about CPD, somebody coming in, talking to us about meditation or mindfulness, or even how to prioritize. Lots of us as well are in roles that we weren't necessarily prepared for. We all train as teachers, we may go on different training courses, but then suddenly we're in charge of timetabling or something that is a real challenge for us. So it's also having that support, I think, kind of buddying system. When I was head of department, as most English teachers will empathise with, numbers aren't my thing. Data wasn't my thing. And if it weren't for the head of maths taking me under her wing, I would have drowned, and my well-being would not have survived such a huge role. It was a very large school, managing 18 members of staff and having data analysis and those types of things on top of that, and not having that person to guide me, to mentor me. So I think it's about using the resources we've got in school as well. Maybe there's something, maybe people can put things forward, things that they're worried about, things